My experiences with the issues of dog breeding by Toshihide Uchiyama. Thanks to my job as a zoo veterinarian, I have had the opportunity to assist with the births of many different species of animals. Recently, I even made headlines by successfully creating a hybrid between a zebra and a Japanese horse, a first in the world. However, I have never had the chance to assist with a dog giving birth, and that remains true to this day. This is partly because I have only kept male dogs and have not been particularly interested in breeding until now. I have raised various popular breeds such as collies, boxers, spaniels, and Maltese, thanks to the support of friends and acquaintances in my profession. However, around the end of last year, I found myself unable to forget the charm and essence of the medium-sized Japanese dogs I kept during my student days before the war, which led me to finally seek a beautiful pure white female Shikoku dog. Until now, I had never felt inclined to spend money on owning a dog, but this time, for some reason, I suddenly decided to do so and specifically sought a female. Last year, on October 4th, my wife discovered that our dog was having her first heat. We made every effort to find a suitable mate and eventually arranged for her to breed with a pure white Ainu dog born in Sapporo. Fortunately, on October 4th, there was a dog exhibition hosted by the Animal Protection Association in the city, and with the organizers' strong encouragement, we decided to participate. After that, we hurried to take her to meet her mate. I was shocked to see an unexpectedly large number of roundworms expelled from the puppies, likely due to placental infection from the mother. Therefore, I took great care and prioritized stool tests alongside her first heat. I also administered a strong deworming medication thoroughly, disinfected the kennel, replaced the soil in the exercise area, and performed disinfectant baths for the coat, taking one step after another. From what I read in books and heard or saw elsewhere, I remembered that the optimal period for dog mating is around the 12th to 14th day after the first bleeding. However, due to transportation arrangements, we decided to proceed with mating on the evening of the 10th day after the bleeding began. Although there was still a significant amount of dark, venous-like blood and noticeable swelling of the genital area, I observed that when the male dog approached, she raised her tail to the side. Considering the lifespan of the sperm in the uterus, I decided to proceed with the mating. Both dogs were young, and it was their first mating, but I was able to insert easily just by gently holding the female's head, and it was over in about 7 minutes. However, because the bleeding was so excessive, I requested to mate again the day after tomorrow, leaving a 1-day interval, and then we left that house. On October 16, 12 days after the heat began, I visited the house with the male dog again. At that time, the bleeding had almost stopped, and the genital area had slightly contracted, showing some wrinkling. Only a very rare, thin discharge was occasionally seen. The female's condition seemed particularly favorable, so we proceeded with the mating. This time, surprisingly, the mating lasted for an extended period of 23 minutes. After successfully leaving the male dog's house, I returned home. However, a week later, when I took out a few other dogs for exercise for the first time in a while, it was evident that she was still at the peak of her heat. This raised concerns that her relationship with the Ainu mate might be in vain. Although there was no visible bleeding from the genital area, it remained significantly swollen, and the melanin, black pigment deposition was particularly noticeable, which only increased my anxiety. At the beginning of November, about 3 weeks after the mating, her appetite began to noticeably increase. One particularly unusual symptom was that her previously tiny, rice-sized, pale nipples were gradually swelling and turning pink. Although I remained somewhat skeptical, I finally began to realize that she might actually be pregnant. However, there were no signs of her belly swelling, and her activity level remained lively, making it difficult to confirm her pregnancy. At one point, I considered conducting a scientific test for vaginal secretions, but due to my busy work schedule, I ultimately left it unattended. Based on my observations of the pregnancy progress in animals such as lions, tigers, leopards, deer, and zebras, I noted that these animals rarely showed significant abdominal enlargement until very close to the time of delivery, when their bellies would suddenly grow larger. Therefore, Therefore, I convinced myself that my beloved dog, being a traditional breed with origins close to wild animals, might similarly have an unrefined lineage, and I worked internally to accept the possibility of her pregnancy. This is an important issue that distinguishes wild animals from domestic livestock. In the natural world, they are bound by the harsh fate of having to hunt for their own food right up until they give birth. Therefore, in my view, I believe that the more noticeable the belly is during pregnancy, regardless of the number of offspring, the more domesticated the animal is. Now, returning to the main topic, around the 30th day of her pregnancy, she started to narrow her eyes and sleep a lot. For a short period, I also observed phenomena similar to morning sickness, where she would vomit after eating 1 or 2 times and then eat again. Based on various observations, I had already determined that she was completely pregnant. I made sure to provide her with regular light exercise morning and evening, a nutritious diet with plenty of food, especially vitamin D supplementation and sunbathing. Additionally, I administered iron fumarate B tablets to prevent anemia during childbirth. Starting around 50 days into her pregnancy, the pink color and swelling of her nipples became extremely noticeable. Upon palpation, movements of the puppies could be felt near the last rib area, chest, and even to the untrained eye. Fetal movements were visible when she lay on her side. On the 59th day after the final mating on October 16, I noticed that if I pressed some of the nipples firmly, a drop of yellowish liquid would appear. By this time, she began to dislike having her abdomen brushed, and interestingly, similar to how a rabbit's fur becomes prone to shedding just before giving birth, my dog also started to lose hair around her nipples with just a gentle stroke of her abdomen, revealing the reddened skin beneath. Anticipating that the delivery was imminent, I turned on the infrared lamp in the whelping and sleeping area, filled it with plenty of bedding, and disinfected the entire space. I added a few drops of pyrethrin to an odorless antibacterial soap solution and used a warm, damp towel to wipe and massage every part of the dog's body. Generally, the pregnancy period for dogs is considered to be between 62 to 63 days, but my dog had a healthy pregnancy and began to give birth around 10 p.m. on December 18. On the 18th, as usual, we finished the light morning exercise, but the breakfast intake was minimal. The dog spent much of the time in a lying position and was occasionally seen making gestures as if looking back at its own belly. From around 7 p.m., a noticeable decline in energy became apparent, and even when called by name, the dog refused to leave the bedroom, with an increase in breathing rate being observed. Starting from around 9 p.m., the dog behaved frantically, biting its own tail, spinning in circles within the small bedroom while remaining in a lying position. At 10 p.m., with a single agonized cry, it gave birth to 1 puppy, followed by the birth of others one after another. For a while, the mother licked her genital area and the newborns, ate the waste on the floor, and repeated these actions without a moment's rest. She cleaned up the waste thoroughly, thus completing the first stage of the labor process. The puppy in question, like its parents who are both pure white, is also pure white at birth. However, starting around the 5th or 6th day, the areas around the nose and mouth, as well as the paw pads, which had been pink up until then, began to show a sudden deposition of melanin pigment, and by the 10th day, these areas had already turned completely black. Around this time, the puppy's soft whimpering is occasionally replaced by adorable yips and barks. By the 12th day, the puppy's eyes begin to open faintly. The dirty secretions from the mother dog have disappeared, and the strong maternal instinct to stay close to her puppies during the early stages of birth is gradually beginning to wane. The mother now starts seeking outdoor exercise and spends more time lying in the yard. During this period, special attention is given to the mother's sunbathing, increased intake of iron supplements, fumarate B, and a large dose of vitamin D. Around the 25th day after birth, I administered deworming medication meant for human babies to the puppies and injected them with vitamin D and dextroniron, which are thought to be particularly prone to deficiency. I believe the puppy's health has been progressing extremely well. This is merely one example, but I have described my observations of the birthing process of a Japanese medium-sized dog breed. Next, I would like to write about 3 or 4 specific issues that I particularly noticed during this birthing. First, regarding the pregnancy duration of the dog. This dog was mated on October 14, the 10th day after bleeding, and again on October 16, the 12th day after bleeding. The birth occurred on December 18. If fertilization occurred on the first mating day, the pregnancy period would have been 68 days. If we calculate from the second mating on the 18th, the period would be 66 days. However, if we consider the optimal fertilization period to be the 15th day after bleeding, even if mating occurs before this, combining the period during which the sperm remains viable, a pregnancy duration of 63 days can be calculated. However, this issue varies greatly depending on factors such as the dog's breed, age, whether it has given birth before, or if it's a first-time pregnancy, making an accurate determination quite difficult. Ordinarily, with wild animals like lions and tigers, they are allowed to mate freely for 5 days to a week while housed in the same enclosure during the estrus period. When determining the expected birth date, the entire mating period, from the first to the last day, is considered, and the gestation period is calculated based on the standard pregnancy length for the species. However, from my experience with these wild animals so far, it appears that the middle days of the estrus period are almost certainly the most reliable for conception. Among dog lovers in general, many tend to nervously calculate the standard pregnancy period of 62 to 63 days. In cases of delayed labor, they often consult me with much concern, leading to unnecessary actions like administering labor-inducing injections. However, as long as the pregnancy is progressing well and the health of the dog is good, I believe there is no need to be overly anxious about sticking strictly to the expected due date. In fact, forcing unnatural interventions could agitate the mother dog, leading to potential failures. The second issue concerns the installation of an infrared lamp in the birthing and sleeping area, also known as a drying bulb. The infrared lamp has become an indispensable piece of equipment in zoos, especially as a winter heating device for tropical animals. For animals like medium-sized dogs that dislike humidity and prefer dry environments, it is a highly beneficial tool. During childbirth, the enclosure, as well as the dog's coat, can easily become dirty and unsanitary due to waste. The infrared lamp is an unexpectedly useful tool for maintaining cleanliness in such conditions. Quickly drying the damp fur of the newborns, combined with the mother's grooming, is the first step towards ensuring their health. A 250-watt infrared lamp is usually sufficient, even under winter night conditions. With outdoor temperatures around 2 degrees Celsius, it can easily maintain a temperature of over 20 degrees Celsius directly under the lamp, 1 meter above the ground. Although many dog breeders still use hot water bottles, stoves, or heaters, I strongly recommend using infrared lamps instead. The third issue concerns the nutritional intake of the mother during pregnancy. Generally, amateurs seem to think that simply providing indulgent, rich foods is sufficient, but this is a completely mistaken idea. I believe that a more modest diet is actually better. In particular, when it comes to calcium intake, many people have almost completely misguided notions. Oversupplementation of calcium often leads to unnecessary strain on the digestive system, creating a vicious cycle of overeating and poor digestion. When it comes to essential nutrients for the pregnant mother and newborn puppies, I would emphasize the importance of vitamin D and fumarate iron, B supplements. General nutrients can be sufficiently obtained from a regular diet, and the intake of calcium and phosphoric acid is only properly regulated through the balanced absorption of vitamin D. This is an issue I am keenly aware of every time I deal with the births of all kinds of animals. Lastly, the fourth issue concerns the ideal design and dimensions of a kennel for dogs. For a breeding dog's kennel, an area of at least 1 tsubo, approximately 3.3 square meters, is desirable. The kennel should ideally be divided into 4 equally sized sections, each measuring about 0.25 tsubo, which would include a birthing and sleeping room, a reserve room, a concrete floored area, and a sand floored area. It would be best if the kennel were positioned facing southeast. The 2 rooms, the sleeping room and reserve room, and half of the concrete floored area should be covered with a roof to provide shelter from rain and shade, while allowing sunlight to reach the entire concrete floor. This would be the ideal setup. By placing the sleeping room at the highest point, followed by the reserve room, and then the concrete floor, with each section having a slight elevation difference, the kennel would stay dry and clean. These are my personal observations, based on my experience with the births of various animals so far. I hope these insights will serve as a useful reference for future dog breeders. We believe that our relationship with customers begins after they bring a puppy home. Our motto is "Our foundation is family." We strive to be like family to our customers for a lifetime. If you have any questions or concerns, please don't hesitate to contact us at the email address